Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's Top 5 of the Week. This is the segment where I comb through the global development space and bring you 5 reading recommendations for the week. Let's go! First is an interesting anthology of short stories on the Sustainable Development Goals interpreted by young African writers aged 15 to 35 titled Beans Without Korkor and Other Stories. The narratives humanize the SDGs by reflecting on how Africans are affected by development issues. Each chapter carries a tongue-in-cheek title dedicated to each writer's exploration of topics which include poverty, climate change, gender-based violence, food security, natural resources, health, urbanization, and employment. Next is a study by Afreximbank on trade-carrying infrastructure gap in the Southern African Development Community, SADC. This report focuses on the 6 key transit markets of landlocked Botswana, Democratic Republic of Congo Copperbelt, Eswatini, Malawi, Zambia, Zimbabwe, and the regions in South Africa that fall within the catchment of the Maputo corridor. The assessment identifies major gaps in the trade-carrying transport and logistics infrastructure on each of the main transport corridors and frames the priority interventions on each regional transport route. My third recommendation looks at financial innovation for climate adaptation in Africa and shares that current finance flows are insufficient to meet Africa's increasingly frequent and severe climate shocks. To address this issue, it proposes that financial innovation for adaptation matches country-level policy and market conditions, and that policymakers and other stakeholders build an enabling environment for adaptation investment. Some of the recommended current and potential sources of adaptation finance in Africa include commercial banks, private equity and venture capital, African international investors, and multilateral climate funds. The report is by the Center for Global Adaptation. Number 4 is a report from the World Bank on the informal economy. A significant amount of the working population in emerging markets and developing economies is concentrated in the informal sector and outside of the protection of government policy. This not only affects those in the informal sector who are vulnerable to income disruptions, but also poses challenges related to the government's ability to provide services, service debt, or implement crisis response measures. The report provides a roadmap for policymakers in developing countries to cope with informality tailored to country circumstances in the form of comprehensive policy packages, which include 1. Streamlined tax regulation and administration and the improved public service delivery. 2. Improvements in macroeconomic policies, governance, and business climates. And 3. Acceleration of financial sector development, which has been associated with declining informality because it reduces the average cost of access to external financing and creates incentives for firms to invest in higher productivity projects and join the formal sector. My final recommendation looks at voluntary sustainability standards in East Africa, which identifies agriculture as a key sector in East African economies and calls for pressing challenges in the sector to be addressed. It provides information, analysis, and recommendations on how voluntary sustainability standards in the region can be scaled up to support agricultural policy objectives. The voluntary sustainability standards assessed in the report are active in staple crop production, notably beans, maize, rice, and wheat. There you have it. I hope you find something interesting. Have a great week. Stay safe. Goodbye.